I gave my roommate everything she wanted. Now she wants my parking spot too, even though she doesn't have a car. Am I wrong for refusing to share? I, 22 female, and my roommate, 22 female, are both college students who moved into an apartment together for this school year. When we were searching for places last year, my roommate had a very specific list of must-haves for the apartment. She wanted a unit with a washer and dryer, a spacious walk-in closet, and a large living room. Every time we toured a potential apartment that didn't meet her criteria, she immediately shut it down. While I tried to keep an open mind, it quickly became apparent that she wasn't willing to compromise. Finally, we came across one apartment that she absolutely loved. I wasn't a big fan of it, but she was completely set in her place. After a lot of back and forth, I finally agreed to live there on one condition. I would get the only designated parking spot during the school years, and she would have it during the summer. It was a fair trade to me, considering she got almost everything she wanted in the apartment, and I just wanted the one parking spot. At the time, she agreed without any complaints. Fast forward 8 months. We recently decided to renew our lease and stay in the apartment for another year. I assumed everything would remain the same. However, shortly after signing, my roommate casually brought up the idea of splitting a street parking pass so we could share the spot. She wanted to start this new arrangement in March, even though summer doesn't technically begin until April 28th. The confusing part? She doesn't even have a car right now. Her boyfriend is giving her a free car for the summer and the next school year, and she suddenly decided that it was only fair for us to share the spot. She acted as if this arrangement was the natural next step and completely disregarded our original agreement. When I reminded her of the deal we made, she brushed it off, saying it only applied for the first year. She claimed it was obvious, and that I should have known it wouldn't extend into the second year. But she never said anything about it before we signed the lease, which feels incredibly unfair. Had I known she was thinking this way, I would have strongly considered moving elsewhere, specifically to a place with 2 parking spaces. It's frustrating because I've compromised with her on so many other things. She prefers to keep the heat turned up extremely high because she's always cold, and I never complain even though it gets unbearably warm. When we moved in, she picked the bigger bedroom with the walk-in closet, even though I would have loved to have it. Her boyfriend practically lives with us and is over nearly every single day, but I've never made a fuss about it. I try to be a good roommate and a good friend, but this situation feels like she's taking advantage of my kindness. I'm not entirely unwilling to compromise on this, but I don't think it's fair for her to expect me to give up the one thing I explicitly asked for. My plan is to stand my ground and refuse to share the spot for the school year. However, to keep the peace, I'm willing to offer her $100 to $150 for the parking spot, even though a street parking permit only costs around $25. I figure it's a gesture of goodwill and could soften the tension. But I genuinely feel like I shouldn't have to go this far. I understand that she wants a fair chance to use the spot now that she'll have a car, but I also believe she should uphold the agreement we made. I'm not sure if my unwillingness to share the parking spot makes me unreasonable or if my frustration is justified. I'd appreciate any insight on how to navigate this disagreement without damaging our friendship. Am I the a-hole? Story 2. My wife thinks I'm selfish for tackling the dishes first, but I'm tired of being stuck with a mountain of mess. Am I really in the wrong? I, 34, male, and my wife, 32, female, have been married for 5 years, and like most couples, we've had our fair share of disagreements. Lately, however, we've been finding ourselves in a constant back and forth over one particular issue, the dishes. When we first moved in together, we divided household chores based on what we were comfortable with. The dishes became my responsibility because my wife has always found them particularly gross. I didn't mind this arrangement. It felt like a fair trade since I'm not as bothered by dirty plates or leftover food residue. Along with the dishes, I also handle taking out the garbage and recycling. Meanwhile, my wife is responsible for general cleaning tasks, such as vacuuming, dusting, and tidying common areas. She also took on laundry duty, though the actual act of folding and putting away clothes has become more of a shared task we tackle together on weekends. The problem is that every time we do a deeper clean of the house, especially before guests come over, my wife and I inevitably end up arguing. Her philosophy is that the dishes should always be the last task done. She reasons that people won't care if there are a few dishes in the sink, but they will definitely notice if the counters aren't spotless or if there's visible clutter. From her perspective, clean surfaces are the most noticeable part of a kitchen, and everything else can wait. She would much rather see me helping her clear off countertops, wipe them down, and vacuum the floors before I even think about tackling the sink. But here's the issue. Cleaning off the counters often involves stacking dishes into the sink. Once that happens, I'm left with a mountain of dishes that makes the job much harder than it needs to be. I can't simply get started because I have to take everything out just to access the sink and get water running. The clutter in the sink also means I can't rinse or soak anything in advance, which ends up making the whole process feel twice as long. I've explained this to my wife multiple times, but she just sees it as me being stubborn or unwilling to compromise. The second issue is that during these cleaning sprees, I often find myself assisting her with her designated chores. It's not that I mind pitching in. I understand that sometimes tasks overlap, and teamwork is necessary. But once I've helped her vacuum, dust, or organize, she still expects me to do the dishes afterward, almost as though the dishes are a punishment I'm being relegated to once all the other work is done. It feels unfair that her responsibilities are spread across the both of us, while mine remain solely my own. I've pointed this out, but she tends to dismiss it, insisting that I'm exaggerating. To make matters worse, whenever I choose to start with the dishes instead of focusing on what she wants, she gets visibly frustrated. She claims I'm selfish and that I only know how to do the dishes. She believes I prioritize the least important task and deliberately disregard her requests. I've tried to compromise by occasionally doing things her way, but every time I end up with an overwhelming pile of dishes that takes far longer than necessary to clean. I do understand where she's coming from to an extent. She's someone who likes to see immediate, visible progress when cleaning. A cleared-off counter and vacuumed floor provide that satisfaction. On the other hand, I find it difficult to focus on those tasks knowing that the dirty dishes are just sitting there, waiting for me. It's like a nagging thought in the back of my mind, and I'd rather tackle the mess in the sink first so I can move on with a clear head. I've also tried to have calm conversations about it, suggesting we find a middle ground. Maybe I can start on the dishes while she begins with the counters, then we switch off if needed. Unfortunately, every time I bring this up, she accuses me of being unwilling to adjust. She's convinced that my choice to prioritize the dishes is a sign that I don't respect her perspective. What makes it all worse is that both of us feel like we're doing the majority of the household work. I suspect the reality is somewhere in the middle. We each tend to overlook the contributions the other is making, especially when emotions run high. She views the tasks I do as minor compared to the general upkeep she manages, while I feel like the physical nature of dishes and garbage removal is undervalued. It's a constant cycle of frustration, and it's starting to wear on our relationship. To be clear, I don't believe my wife is intentionally being unreasonable. I know she wants our home to look nice and presentable, and her methods make sense in her mind. But I also feel like my perspective deserves some acknowledgement. When I say that it's easier and more practical to tackle the dishes first, it's not just me being difficult. It's genuinely how I operate best when it comes to cleaning. That brings me to why I'm writing this. I'm at a loss. Am I being unreasonable for insisting on doing the dishes first? Should I be more flexible and try to align with my wife's way of cleaning, even if it feels inefficient to me? Or is it fair for me to stand my ground on the one task I've been responsible for from the beginning? I'm open to hearing if I'm in the wrong because at the end of the day, I want us to find a solution that doesn't leave us both feeling resentful. Am I the a-hole for prioritizing the dishes over other chores even though my wife strongly disagrees? Story 3. I inherited everything from my late neighbor, while her estranged daughter got nothing. Now she's furious and accusing me of manipulation. Am I in the wrong? I, 32 female, recently came into an inheritance when my neighbor and close friend, Valerie, 68 female, passed away. I met Valerie when I moved into my condo at 2018. She became my next-door neighbor, and our places were on the top floor with almost connecting balconies. From the moment we met, we clicked. Every Saturday morning, we would both tend to our plant babies, sip coffee, and chat about life. Valerie had an incredible sense of humor and a knack for storytelling. She shared stories about her life, her travels, and even her regrets. One story that stuck with me was about her family. Valerie had been a widow since she was 55. She often spoke about her late husband, Gary, who she had married young. Although they built a life together, Valerie admitted she never truly had the chance to explore who she was until Gary was gone. It wasn't until a year into our friendship that I learned about Valerie's estranged daughter, Sam, 44 female. The story was heartbreaking. When Sam was just out of high school, she came out as gay. This didn't sit well with Gary, who, according to Valerie, had very rigid views. He kicked Sam out of the house, disowned her, and told her to never return. Valerie, still reeling from the shock, stood by and did nothing. It was clear that it was her biggest regret in life. She admitted she wished she had fought for Sam instead of allowing Gary to dictate the outcome. Valerie told me that years later, after Gary's passing, she realized just how much she had lost. Despite wanting to reach out to Sam, she never did. She didn't know how to face the daughter she had abandoned. When I asked her why she hadn't tried, her answer was simple: she didn't think she deserved forgiveness. I couldn't stand the thought of Valerie living with that pain, so I did some gentle sleuthing. With a bit of effort, I found Sam on Facebook. It was a bittersweet moment. Sam had built a life for herself, a good life. She seemed happy, had a partner, and even had a small circle of close friends. I encouraged Valerie to reach out. After a lot of hesitation, she agreed. Together, we drafted a heartfelt message. Valerie apologized, expressed how much her perspectives had changed, and asked if they could try to rebuild their relationship. We hit send and waited. Days passed. Then weeks. Valerie saw that Sam had read the message, but no response ever came. Valerie tried to stay hopeful, but it was clear the lack of response hurt. She told me she understood if Sam never wanted to speak to her again. She had accepted that she may never have the chance to make things right. A month ago, tragedy struck. I came home from work to find Valerie on her balcony. She had suffered an embolism and passed away. I was devastated. Losing her so suddenly was unbearable. After the funeral, I reached out to Sam. I sent her the obituary and the memorial page. Again, I received no response. I assumed that was the end of it. The lawyer handling Valerie's affairs contacted me soon after, and to my surprise, I was the sole beneficiary of her estate. I never expected this. Valerie had left me everything: her condo, her savings, and even her cherished plant collection. I was stunned. The lawyer explained that Valerie had created her will after Gary's death and had intentionally chosen not to include Sam. He assured me that the inheritance was legally mine and that Sam had no claim to it. But a few days ago, I received a message from Sam. She was furious. She accused me of manipulating and taking advantage of an elderly woman. Sam claimed that as Valerie's daughter, she was entitled to her mother's belongings. Her words were sharp, filled with anger and pain. I could understand her grief, but the accusations cut deep. My immediate reaction was indignation. Who was she to demand anything? She hadn't spoken to Valerie in decades. Valerie had tried to reach out, and Sam chose not to respond. But as the days passed, doubt began to creep in. Would Valerie have wanted me to give something to Sam? Was I holding on to something that was never truly mine to keep? The lawyer reassured me once again that I was under no legal obligation to give Sam anything. But morality is not so black and white. I know how much Valerie regretted losing her daughter. Would giving Sam a portion of the inheritance provide her with some sense of closure? Or would it only serve as a hollow gesture? I've gone back and forth, wrestling with these thoughts. Valerie could have easily changed her will to include Sam if she wanted to. She knew where Sam was. She could have tried harder to reach her. But maybe Valerie felt it wasn't her place to force a reconnection through material possessions. Part of me wants to honor Valerie's decision. She chose me to receive her estate, a reflection of the friendship we built. I was there for her in her final years. I listened to her stories, celebrated her milestones, and comforted her in her moments of regret. Our bond was genuine. But then I think of Sam. She may not have responded to Valerie's message, but grief is unpredictable. Maybe she wasn't ready. Maybe she didn't believe the words were genuine. And now, it's too late. Would I be the wrong person if I held firm to what was left to me? Or would I be doing the right thing by offering Sam something, a gesture of goodwill, even if it's not what she expects? I'm still unsure of what to do. I want to honor Valerie's wishes, but I also want to be compassionate. Maybe, in time, the right answer will become clear. Until then, I'm left wondering, would I be the a-hole if I don't share the inheritance that I received from a friend with her daughter?